What if the worst moment of your life turned out to be the beginning of everything you ever needed? Stay with me, because this story is going to take you somewhere you didn't expect, and I promise, by the end of it, you won't be the same person who pressed play. If this kind of story moves you, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We put out stories like this every week, and you don't want to miss a single one. Now, let's begin. It was the kind of rain that doesn't apologize. The kind that falls straight down in thick, heavy sheets, soaking through jackets in seconds and turning the roads into shallow rivers. It was a Tuesday night in late October, and most people in the city of Clarksville had the good sense to be indoors. Most people. Marcus Hayes was not most people. He was crouched beside the rear wheel arch of his 11-year-old Chevy pickup, trying to wrestle a spare tire into place on the side of Route 9, where the streetlights were spaced too far apart and the passing cars threw waves of muddy water across the road shoulder every time they went by. He had already soaked through his jacket. His jeans were drenched from the knees down. His hands were shaking, not from cold, though it was cold, but from the particular kind of exhaustion that only single fathers know. The exhaustion that lives in your bones, that sets in around month 18 of doing everything alone. He was 34 years old, and he felt 60. In the cab of the truck, his 7-year-old daughter Lily was asleep in the back seat, wrapped in a dinosaur blanket he kept there for exactly this kind of situation. She'd fallen asleep around mile 40, somewhere between the hospital and home, her small face still faintly flushed from the fever she'd had that morning. The pediatric clinic visit had gone fine. She was okay. But the tire had blown on the way back, and the rain had started, and Marcus was out in the dark trying to change a tire he could barely see, and every single thing in his life felt like it was pressing down on him all at once. He was trying to get the lug nut loose when the headlights appeared. A car pulled off the road about 30 feet ahead of him. Not a normal car. Even in the rain and the dark, Marcus could see the silhouette, low, wide, expensive. A black Mercedes S-Class. The kind of car that doesn't belong on a rural highway shoulder at 10:30 on a Tuesday night. The engine cut off. The door opened. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a charcoal trench coat, heels that were absolutely not built for gravel, and an expression that Marcus couldn't quite read as she walked toward him through the rain. She was somewhere in her early 40s, he guessed. Sharp features. The kind of posture you develop when people spend years watching you walk into rooms. She was holding her phone with a cracked screen, and she looked, for all her composure, genuinely lost. "My car stopped," she said, when she was close enough that he could hear her over the rain. Marcus looked up from the tire. "Stopped?" "Just died. I was driving and it just stopped moving. I have no signal out here." He straightened up, knees protesting. He looked back at her car, then at her. "When was the last time the warning light came on?" She paused. "There was a yellow light. A few days ago. I meant to have someone look at it." He almost said something about that but didn't. It wasn't his place. Instead, he grabbed his flashlight from the truck bed and walked over to her car. He pointed the beam under the hood after she popped it, scanned the engine, checked a few things. Then he crouched down and looked underneath. "You've got a broken serpentine belt," he said. "It's what drives everything, the alternator, the power steering. Once it goes, the car loses power. You're not getting this started tonight." She absorbed this with a stillness that struck him. No panic, no dramatic reaction. Just processing. "I see," she said. "Is it fixable here?" "Not without the right belt. I'd need to have the part." He stood back up. "You're going to need a tow. Do you have roadside assistance?" "Yes. But no signal to call them." He nodded toward his truck. "You can use mine. I've got a portable hotspot, battery-powered. And my daughter's in the back, she's asleep, she won't be any trouble. Come out of the rain for a minute." She looked at him for a long moment. There was something assessing in her gaze, but also something else, something softer that she seemed to be working to keep back. Then she nodded and followed him. In the cab of the truck, with the rain hammering the roof and Lily's small breathing steady in the back, something strange happened. The woman, her name, she told him, was Claire, called her roadside assistance. She was told 60 to 90 minutes for a tow. She sat in the passenger seat of a stranger's pickup truck, in wet clothes, and she didn't ask to be let out. She didn't look at her phone. She just sat there for a moment and then asked, quietly, "Is your daughter okay?" Marcus glanced in the mirror at Lily. "She had a fever this morning. She's better now. We were coming back from the doctor." "She's sleeping it off?" "She sleeps through everything. I think she inherited that from her mother." A short silence. Claire looked out the rain-streaked window. "Where's her mother?" He didn't answer immediately. Not out of hurt, or not only out of hurt, but because the honest answer was complicated and most people didn't really want the complicated version. "She passed away," he said. 3 years ago. It was sudden. Claire turned to look at him. "I'm sorry." "Yeah." He said it the way he always said it, not dismissing her condolences, but having long since run out of ways to respond to them that felt adequate. Another pause. Then she said, "I lost my husband 4 years ago." Marcus looked at her. She was looking at her hands now, folded in her lap, the cracked phone screen facing down. "He was my business partner too," she said. "Which means I lost him twice. Once as a person, once as the co-architect of everything we were trying to build. I had to keep building anyway. You don't really have a choice when 2,000 people depend on your company for their livelihoods." She said this without self-pity, just as a statement of fact, and somehow that made it land harder. "What kind of company?" Marcus asked. She glanced at him with a faint expression he couldn't quite name. "Infrastructure development. We build things. Roads, bridges, water systems. Primarily in underserved regions, domestic and international." She paused. Claire Ashworth. He recognized the name a half-second after she said it. Ashworth Infrastructure. He'd seen the name on a billboard outside a road project 3 counties over. "Marcus Hayes," he said. "I fix things." Something moved through her expression at that, almost a smile, but held back. "What kind of things?" "Engines, mostly. I run a small shop in town. We do auto repair, some restoration work on the side. It's nothing like building bridges." "Bridges don't start," she said simply. "Engines do. I've always found engines more honest." He looked at her. She was staring at the rain on the windshield and she seemed, in that moment, like someone who was deeply tired of being important. Like someone who had been sitting in boardrooms and on private jets and in buildings with her name on them for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to sit in a pickup truck in the rain and talk to someone who had no reason to want anything from her. In the back seat, Lily stirred, made a small sound, and then stilled again. Both of them looked back at her instinctively, the way adults in the presence of sleeping children always do, as though keeping watch is reflexive, hardwired. "She's beautiful," Claire said softly. "She's stubborn and loud and she has 17 stuffed animals and she knows the name of every dinosaur that ever existed," Marcus said. "She's the best person I've ever met." Claire smiled then. Actually smiled. And it changed her whole face, made her look younger and less guarded and somehow like a different person than the composed, contained woman who had walked out of that Mercedes in the rain. They talked for an hour and 20 minutes while the tow truck made its way through the dark. They talked the way strangers sometimes do when circumstances have removed all the usual social scaffolding, honestly, without performance, without the careful management that most adults apply to conversations with people they're trying to impress or protect themselves from. Marcus told her about his wife, Maya, how she had been a teacher, how she used to grade papers at the kitchen table at midnight with a cup of tea going cold beside her, how Lily had her same jaw and her same stubbornness and it made him love his daughter with an intensity that sometimes felt like it might break him. Claire listened without trying to redirect the conversation toward herself, which in Marcus's experience was rare. Claire told him about starting over after David died. How she'd had to become, essentially, 2 people overnight. How the grief and the responsibility had fused together in a way that made it impossible to separate one from the other. How she had started to define herself entirely by the company, by the work, by the perpetual motion of building and deciding and directing, because stillness let the grief in, and grief was not a thing she could afford. She said this quietly, matter-of-factly, and then immediately looked out the window as though she'd surprised herself. "You ever stop?" Marcus asked. "Meaning?" "Just stop. Take a day. Not do anything important." She was quiet for a moment. "My therapist asks me that." "What do you tell her?" "That I'll get around to it." "A beat. What about you?" He thought about it. "Sunday mornings," he said. "Lily wakes me up early and we make pancakes. We watch whatever documentary she's obsessed with that week. Last Sunday it was something about ancient Egypt. She wanted to build a pyramid out of couch cushions." He paused. "That's when I stop. Sunday mornings." Claire looked at him with an expression that was difficult to describe, something between wistfulness and recognition. Like someone watching a light through a window from outside in the dark. When the tow truck finally appeared, its amber light strobing through the rain, they both sat for a moment without moving, the way you do at the end of a conversation you don't quite want to end. Then Claire reached into her coat and produced a business card. She held it out. "I want to have a mechanic I trust," she said. And then, a fraction of a second later, as though she was deciding something as she said it, "I want to see you again." Marcus took the card. Looked at it. Looked at her. "I'm not a luxury brand," he said. "We're a small shop on Caldwell Street. I don't have a waiting room with espresso machines." "Good," she said. "I spend too much time in rooms with espresso machines." She came to the shop the following Thursday. Not with the Mercedes that had been taken to a dealership. She came in a rented sedan, dressed in jeans and a blazer, looking both out of place and oddly at ease. She brought a broken vintage motorbike in the truck bed, a 1974 Honda CB360 that had belonged to her husband. She asked if he could restore it. Marcus walked around it slowly, crouching here and there, checking the frame, spinning a wheel. He asked her what she wanted done with it. She said she wanted it running again. Not to ride it, she didn't know how to ride. Just to have it running. She wanted to hear the engine. She wanted it to sound the way it had sounded when David was alive. He told her it would take about 6 weeks. That some parts would need to be sourced. That it wouldn't be cheap. She told him that wasn't a concern. He said it was to him, he quoted her fare, and she told him to charge her what it was worth. He said he always did. Lily was there that Thursday, sitting at the shop's small front desk with a book, because the school had a half-day and Marcus's neighbor had a dentist appointment. She looked up at Claire from the book and said, very directly, "Do you know about dinosaurs?" Claire sat down across from her without hesitation. "Some. Tell me what I'm missing." Lily launched into an explanation of the Therizinosaurus that lasted 11 minutes by Marcus's count. He watched from the doorway of the garage bay, holding a wrench, listening to his daughter talk to this woman who ran a company that built bridges, and he felt something shift in him. Something quiet and careful, like a door that had been closed for a long time easing open just slightly on its hinges. Not swinging wide open. Just easing. The 6 weeks of the restoration became something neither of them formally acknowledged as anything other than what it was on paper, a client and a mechanic, a project with a timeline and a price. Claire came to the shop every Thursday. Not always for long. Sometimes just to check progress and end up sitting with Lily for 20 minutes. Sometimes to stand in the bay with Marcus while he explained what he was rebuilding and why, and she listened with genuine attention, asking questions that showed she understood structural systems and load-bearing logic even when the object in question was a 1974 Honda engine. He learned that she was harder than she appeared, and softer than she allowed. She made decisions that affected thousands of people without flinching, negotiated with government agencies and international contractors with a calmness that was almost unnerving. And then she sat on a metal stool in his garage and held a flashlight steady for 45 minutes while he worked in a tight space on the CB360's carburetor, and she didn't complain or check her phone once. She learned that he was quieter than he seemed, and stronger than he believed. She watched him parent Lily, not the big performances of parenthood, but the small, constant ones. The way he packed a healthy lunch every single day even when he was exhausted. The way he talked to his daughter like she was a person worth talking to. The way he never, not once, let her see his tired. She thought about that a lot. The discipline of not letting your children carry your sadness. There was an evening, week 4 of the restoration, when Lily had a bad night. Not a sickness, just the kind of crying that comes over small children who have lost a mother, and sometimes it surfaces without warning, and she cried in a way that shook the walls a little, and Marcus sat with her on the floor of her bedroom and held her and said the right things in the right order, and Claire, who had stopped by to drop off a part she'd tracked down at an antique dealer, was waiting in the hallway and heard all of it. She stood there for a long time, not meaning to listen, unable to leave. When Lily finally settled and Marcus came out into the hall, he found Claire leaning against the wall with her arms crossed and her eyes bright. He didn't say anything. She said, "You're very good at this." He said, "I've had practice." She said, very quietly, "She's lucky." He looked down the hall toward Lily's room. "I keep thinking that the other way. That I'm the lucky one." He looked back at Claire. "Do you want to stay for dinner? It's just pasta. Nothing impressive." She stayed. The night he finished the CB360 was a Friday in December, cold and clear. He had been at the shop since 6 in the morning. He wheeled it outside just after dark, into the cold air, and he started it. The engine turned over, coughed once, and then caught a clean, low, steady sound that rolled out into the night like something being answered. Like a question that had been waiting a long time. He called Claire. She arrived 20 minutes later, still in her work clothes. She walked out into the parking lot and stood in front of the motorcycle, and for a long moment she didn't speak. The engine was still running, a gentle idle. The exhaust curled up white into the cold air. Her face did something complicated and private, and Marcus stayed back a few steps because he understood instinctively that this moment was not about him. "He bought this the year we met," she said finally. Her voice was level but only just. "He always said he was going to restore it. He never got around to it." She paused. "Neither did I." "Now it's done," Marcus said. She nodded slowly. And then she turned to look at him, and the complicated private thing in her expression shifted into something clear and direct. "Thank you," she said. It came out like it meant more than 2 words could carry. He nodded. "You want to hear it run properly? I can take it around the block." She watched him ride it out of the parking lot and back around. She stood there in the cold, listening to the engine, and she was smiling and crying at the same time, and she didn't bother trying to hide either one. When he pulled back in and cut the engine, she said, "I have a proposal." He got off the bike. "Okay. 2 of my company vehicles need overhaul. A project truck and a survey van. I'd like your shop to handle it. Ongoing maintenance contract." She looked at him steadily. "And I'd like you to come to dinner. Not as a contractor. As," she paused. "As Marcus." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I come with a 7-year-old who will want to explain dinosaurs for at least an hour." "I know," she said. And the way she said it, with absolute certainty, without hesitation, made it clear that she had already thought about this. That this was not an afterthought. "Sunday," he said. "Sunday," she agreed. "Here's what Marcus would tell you, if you asked him later about the night on Route 9. He'd tell you that he wasn't looking for anything. That he was a man in the rain trying to change a tire, running on fumes, doing his best. And he'd tell you that's usually the condition required, not looking, not performing, not managing your impression. Just being real and tired and out there in the rain doing the work because the work has to be done." And here's what Claire would tell you. She'd tell you she had spent 4 years being so useful to everyone around her that she had forgotten how to be useless. How to sit in the passenger seat. How to let someone else hold the flashlight. And that the night her car died on a dark road in the rain was the first time in 4 years that she had let something happen to her instead of managing it. And that the man who crouched in the dark next to a broken tire and offered her a dry cab and a portable hotspot and a daughter who loved dinosaurs, that man reminded her that ordinary things can be extraordinary. That being present and honest and genuinely good is rarer than building bridges. The thing about grief is that it doesn't end. It just gets folded into your life differently over time, smaller, more integrated, a shape you carry that you learn to move around without always bumping into it. Marcus and Claire both knew that. They weren't two broken people completing each other. They were two whole people who had absorbed enormous loss and kept going anyway, and who found, one rainy Tuesday night on Route 9, that going together felt different than going alone. Lily, for what it's worth, had an opinion on the matter. She told her father, approximately 3 weeks after the Sunday dinner, that Claire needed to come to more Sunday mornings. When Marcus asked why, Lily said, very seriously, because she doesn't know about the ankylosing yet. And that's important information. Marcus agreed that it was. Life doesn't announce its turning points. It doesn't put up signs on the road that say, this is the moment everything changes. It just sends rain. It sends a blown tire and a dead engine and two people who are exhausted and honest and have nothing to prove to each other. And sometimes, if you're present enough to notice, if you're willing to get out of the car and stand in the rain and offer what you have, sometimes that's all it takes. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you that ordinary people live the most extraordinary lives, please give this video a like. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear stories like this one. And if you're new here, subscribe, we do this every week. Stories about real moments, real feelings, and the quiet kind of courage that doesn't make the news but changes everything. Take care of yourselves. And don't forget to hold the flashlight steady for someone.